My first guest is an independent political analyst, historian, and author of The Great American Political Trivia Challenge, Political Trivia on Steroids. Rich Rubino, welcome back to the program.
Thank you so much.
You want to give me a quick reaction on that before we get to the speaker's race?
Yeah, quickly, I'll just say from a political standpoint, this country is so bifurcated that no matter what happens on either side, whether it's to Joe Biden on the left or Donald Trump on the right, I don't think this is really going to move the needle one way or another. I think that everyone's just so divided right now. I think generally speaking, the last election, 94% of Democrats voted for Joe Biden, 94% of Republicans voted for Donald Trump. And assuming those are the two nominees this time around, I think it's pretty much going to be just about a carbon copy of that.
All right, I'm going to try to impress you with a little trivia of my own.
Oh.
Every person whose turn it was, for whatever position, has either lost or turned out to be a disaster. And if you go all the way back to Gerald Ford, if you start to look at the presidential candidates whose turn it was, they almost exclusively lost, except maybe George H.W. Bush, but he was only a one-termer. So you had Dole, lost, right? It was McCain's turn, lost. Then it became Romney's turn, lost. George W. Bush, it wasn't his turn. Hillary Clinton, her turn, lost twice to two amateurs, yep. Obama and Donald Trump. Al Gore didn't become president, but it was his turn. The Republicans have a problem with what I call the Republican Pez dispenser. Whoever becomes speaker because it's their turn, whether it's Hastert, Boehner, or Ryan. And then it became McCarthy's turn. Now we have someone, Jim Jordan, whose turn it is not, and the conference is turning on him.
You know, first of all, what's fascinating what you just said, from between 1952 and 2008 on 2004 rather, on every single ticket, with the exception of 1964 when they nominated Barry Goldwater, there was either a Dole, a Bush, or a Nixon on every Republican ticket. That's kind of the primogenitor theory of the Republican Party. It's always someone's turn. You're right. It's always the person who comes in second. Reagan came in second to Ford in 76. 1980, he was the nominee. George H.W. Bush came in second to him. He becomes the nominee. Bob Dole came in second to him. He's the nominee in 96. John McCain came in second to George W. Bush in 2000. By 2008, he's the nominee. So that is certainly something invariable about the Republican Party. Now, in terms of Jim Jordan, I think he made his third try, and I think that part of the reason why he lost the speakership, why he does not get the requisite 217 votes, is first of all, there are members in those 18 districts that voted for Joe Biden last time that are Republican districts who are afraid to vote for somebody so conservative. They're afraid if they were seeing these advertisements right now. They saw the handwriting on the wall. They saw these advertisements, Democrats running, showing a picture of them and Jim Jordan. The others were appropriators who their first job in the United States Congress, but more so than being a conservative, is to bring largesse to their district. They saw Jim Jordan as kind of an obstructionist. And there are kind of some aberrations. And one of them is Ken Buck from Colorado. And Ken Buck's one of the most conservative members of Congress, but he has a lot of objections personally to Jim Jordan. He actually voted for Tom Emmer, congressman from Minnesota, who's going to run for speaker himself. And they asked him why you voted for him. He says, well, I don't like him either. So he's kind of the aberration. But I think that's partly why Jim Jordan did not get the 218 votes, even though he did receive an overwhelming majority of the Republican caucus.
Yeah, they say he's an obstructionist, even though he would do exactly this thing that all the Republicans say they want to do: cut the spending, cut the budget, cut the taxes, secure the border. My producer got in my ear, it's breaking now, that Byron Donalds has been nominated to be Speaker of the House. That would be huge for conservatives.
It would also be huge because this is somebody who was literally just elected. This is one of the most youngest members of Congress, from Florida, African American, comes from a relatively safe district in Florida, but very rarely do you have somebody who's Speaker of the House who's only been in there for a term or two. Usually there's some people like Tom Foley or Newt Gingrich who've been in there for quite a long period of time. You're probably one of the youngest. It probably goes back to really days of someone like Henry Clay, when you have people, as soon as they get there, automatically become Speaker of the House. Would he be a unifying figure? Perhaps, although I can see some members who have been there for a long period of time saying, do we really want somebody who's kind of a neophyte who just got elected? Do we really want to put that person, the most competent person in the United States House of Representatives? That might be somewhat of an objection, but certainly he's someone who's also very charismatic as well.
Okay, so give me the trivia. The Constitution says the House shall choose a speaker, but it does not order that person to be from. Has anyone ever become Speaker of the House from the outside in our history?
No, there have been people. There have been people who have voted for people from the outside. For example, you see this sometimes. Congressman Cooper from Tennessee, for example, is a Democrat who didn't like Nancy Pelosi, didn't like Republicans. So he would always vote for Colin Powell, completely constitutionally permissible. You saw yesterday, so 3 members of the New York delegation voted for Lee Zeldin. Lee Zeldin's a former member of Congress from New York, the failed gubernatorial nominee last time around, but it's completely constitutional. That can really be just about anybody. The Constitution does not explicitly say it has to be a sitting member. So theoretically, it could be anybody on the outside, but I think more likely it would be someone who would be somewhat of a former member. You actually saw one member vote for former speaker yesterday, John Boehner, and that could also theoretically happen. The question I have is, if it is somebody who from the outside, how do they notify that person? How do they know if it's someone nominates John Smith? How do they know which John Smith is going to be Speaker of the House if that person were to actually win? And if they are, do they actually get a vote as a sitting member if you're up there as a Speaker of the House? Because the Speaker right now does get a vote in case it's high. So there are all sorts of constitutional avenues, constitutional questions